Hi, folks. Welcome to this Work From Anywhere webinar. I would say it is good to see you, but I can't see you. And I miss being together in person for all of these teachings, but this is so convenient that I will say it is good to be seen and it is good to be together. I'm grateful for the time to get to chat about work from anywhere. We are here to talk about this pressing question. Work from anywhere is a really pressing question. I think that it is not getting enough attention in business circles today as it should. There's been a huge focus throughout 2021 on a safe return to office, on what kind of return we're going to have and how much work is allowed through this short-term phase and how the Delta variant affected it. But ultimately, I think all of that hides the fact that underneath this lurks a really big question, which is what is the long-term work from anywhere policy that our organizations need to adopt? And I think this question about what's the right amount of remote work is actually a really perilous question. We're seeing companies get it wrong all over the place. And what I want to do is spend some time today together discussing what we see, what we've learned, and some principles that we can follow so that we can benefit from the ones who've made mistakes and benefit from some wisdom as we design workplaces with the right amount of work from anywhere for the long haul. There's a lot of confusion around this. If you look at headlines, you look at data and studies as I have, you'll see surveys and studies all over the map. There's certain trends that become clear. And ultimately, I believe that there are certain principles that are clear guidelines for how we should walk this. Before we dive in and get to the full content in this, I want to do two clarifications. So one is we'll be taking questions through the Q&A. I'll answer those at the end. So please use the Q&A feature for any questions. And I want to note that I use the work from anywhere term when you might hear work from home or remote work more typically. And I think it's an important distinction. A lot of times as business leaders, if we use work from home, we immediately think we get this nice happy picture of our team members sitting at home with a cup of coffee and they're working from a nice, comfortable set desk. Well, that picture is going to inform certain policies, certain expectations on location, and certain expectations when it comes to the technology side and securing this. When in reality, if we start to allow remote work, it really becomes work from anywhere. People are working from coffee shops and campsites, from home and hotels. They're working from all kinds of different locations. And that has a real impact on the kind of technology, especially when it comes to cybersecurity that we use, but also when it comes to just how we think about our workforce, how we think about recruiting, how we think about this whole shift. It's not just remote work, which most of us were familiar with for many years, some ability, whether it's on a snow day or whatever, to do remote work. And it's not just work from home, it's actually work from anywhere. WFA for short. You know, we in the IT industry love our acronyms. So of course, we're going to call it WFA, but it's work from anywhere. All right, 5 principles to consider. I'm going to talk briefly through these, and we'll get through some case studies and some examples in this, talk through mainstays, and then I look mainstays use, and then I look forward to diving into some questions. Principle 1, think well. Banish the easy button. You know those wonderful, stable, easy buttons? Take that thing and throw it over your shoulder, because this is not an easy question. The right amount of remote work for your organization is deceptively complex. And it's easy to be anchored in the past on this and to think, oh, well, for years we had remote work, then we entered the pandemic and everybody did it. And then we're just going to go back and have a little bit more flexibility. Feels like an easy button decision. I think that that is an unwise decision to make too quick of a decision on this. In addition, there are 2 really loud camps in this work from anywhere conversation that we're having really nationally and across all of these industries and sectors. One camp is this camp that's been doing this forever. So often software companies, they write books and they write blog posts and they're loud on social media and they say, this is the way that it should be. The office is dead. Just come together for event space, get some WeWork collaboration space and let people work wherever they work. Get out of this stodgy management and get rid of it. Just allow people to work from wherever. There's so much flexibility in it. And on the other side, in the other extreme, there's a really loud camp that says, no, there's a reason business has been done how it is, how it has been. Let's get people back into the office where we can collaborate, we can have relationships, we can be together in person. You hear both camps, they can both sound really logical. If we look at the camp of total flexibility, think about the hardworking parents. I have 3 small children. Being able to work from home as I am right now, being able to work from various locations is incredibly helpful when you're dealing with sick days and dealing with sports and dealing with events and just being a parent. It's helpful to life and the lifestyle and to be able to go travel for a while and continue to work and have that flexibility. You think about the benefits to so many team members of that flexibility. You see why people are in this camp of allow a maximum amount of remote work. Then you hear about recruiting and all the challenges we're having in recruiting across all kinds of sectors. And it's like, well, now you can expand your geographic net. It makes all kinds of sense. And then people say, look at how successful I've been throughout the pandemic. My performance has been fantastic. Why would you make me come back into the office? And yet there's a dark side to that. Microsoft Research studied 61,000 employees through about 6 months of the pandemic. And they found that communication silos developed. The more remote work was happening, the more communication silos happened. And I think there's a really simple question that highlights this, which is, who do you talk to when you're in the office? And what kind of conversations do you have? Versus who do you talk to when you're working remotely? And what kind of conversations do you have? If you think about the different people that you interact with, you're naturally working remotely going to be more siloed. You're naturally going to be talking more at a certain level with technology. And I think that communicating only over technology has a real danger of eroding and thinning out our relationships. You know, we saw this with one of the foremost champions of remote work over the last few years, which is a company called Basecamp, phenomenally successful company with a fairly small employee size and an enormous footprint of thousands, millions of users of their popular project management software. Well, if you happen to Google Basecamp implosion, you'll see that earlier this year, they had social and political conversations that were all happening online and in their forums, and they got heated. And when they tried to deal with the drama, they had to do all hands meetings on Zoom because they had no other option. And ultimately, they ended up just saying, we're banning these kinds of conversations from the workplace. And a third of the company resigned in revolt, and it was terrible for that company. Now, that's a complex situation. Can I say that just because they were working all remotely and had no office and no time together, can I say that's the only factor? No, but boy, it makes you think, doesn't it? The foremost champion of saying you don't even need an office, work anywhere, work completely remotely. We don't need this. We have all the tools for these conversations. But have you seen what's happening with political conversations when they happen online? And have you actually been able to have an engaging conversation with someone in person? Still can be hard, but much easier to do when you're actually together, physically sharing the same space, feeling the person, being with the person. So this camp that says, just go all remote, I think we're seeing that there's dangers to this. There's silos, thinning of relationship. Then this camp that says, let's get it all back. Let's get everyone back into the office. You see executives in New York City, like JP Morgan Chase, saying, get everyone back into the office. We need mentoring. We need creativity. We need all of this around. And yet what we're seeing in all the reports, the anecdotes, the surveys, the studies, is those companies are seeing higher and higher turnover. And it makes sense. I think all of us know someone who has had an experience of expecting to have flexible work options, not having them, and then either looking for a job now or having an indicator to go look for another job. There was one of the recent surveys showed that people who aren't satisfied with their level of flexibility are 25% more likely to go look for a new role. That up to, and that in knowledge workers, up to 70% of people who of all knowledge workers, 50% of all knowledge workers are interested in looking for a new role, but those who aren't satisfied, it's 70%. It's over 70% who aren't satisfied with their flexibility are interested in looking for a new job over this next year. That means that what we're seeing in this turnover, I think, is just going to accelerate and continue. We were talking with a family, my wife and I were talking with a family at the park the other day who moved up here in the middle of this, had their jobs in New York, fully expected to be able to continue to work remotely, and then were called back and had to face, do we sell our home in New Hampshire and pull our kids out of the school and go back into Manhattan in the commute, or do we look for new jobs? That's obviously a more extreme example, but we're seeing this all around. So if we know that those polls seem to have risk, well, for a lot of us, it feels like the easy button is just say hybrid. But here's again where we want to think well, because even if hybrid is right, perhaps it is, there are still a lot of nuances to this, how we do this and how we roll this out throughout the organization. We're seeing Apple moving to hybrid, Vanguard moving to hybrid, companies locally moving into some kind of a hybrid. And the question then is, well, you mandating days in the office. Vanguard and Apple, they're mandating 3 days a week in the office, but they're also seeing employee backlash. And the question is, how much is that backlash going to continue? Just remember, everyone who worked remotely over the last year and a half has a new fundamental expectation of remote work. They have a new belief and understanding of work, how they can do it, the way they want to do it, and they are going to maximize their employment. It's a matter of time in order to get this. So there's advantages and disadvantages. So let's recognize it's a complex problem and let's think well. That's our first principle. Principle number 2, listen well. Let us listen to our team. Let us listen to the people who work for our organizations and give great regard to what is best for them. If you, like me, believe that life is defined by kindness, by pursuit of meaning, by love, and by care for human beings, and that people matter more than money, then ultimately this is a wonderful chance, a wonderful invitation in this question to make our businesses more of a place of care. To take our organizations and say, yes, we continue to need to pursue a mission with great energy. And we continue to need to be responsible to the bottom line, to the finance, to the shareholders. And yet that does not mean that we have to be places that prioritize that over people. And in fact, isn't money itself there to serve people? Does a pile of cash in a corner ever do anything for anybody? It's only how it impacts someone's life. And so we know that meaning and fulfillment comes from serving and loving others. And this is a wonderful chance to say, how can we actually move our organizations further into being places of care, places of listening, places of kindness? That should be normal in organizations and normal as business leaders, where we bring our full selves and we say we are responsible to the organization, but we are even more responsible to people. At the end of our lives, if we get to the end of our lives and we've built these organizations that have had all these financial and growth results, and there's a string of burnt out, sad, embittered people along the way, is that success that we want to chase? It is not. And so I want to challenge all of us to take this opportunity to listen really, really well. Listen to our team and to say, what do you value? And most tend to want to maximize flexibility. Some love being in the office. It's healthier for them to be in the office. Some love being from home. Some like being at home and need to be encouraged to be at the office. Some love being in the office, need to be encouraged to be a little bit remote. I think this allows us to intentionally design and be thoughtful as we're listening about how is our work and the roles in our workplace, how are we designing for the maximum good for people as people, not just as productivity machines in what we're doing. I interviewed somebody a while back who worked for a company bought by Amazon. And he said in every process that they documented for Amazon, wherever there was a human being involved in the process, it was labeled as a defect because the goal was to automate everything. And while I understand the goal of automation, anything in business that sees a human being as a defect or their involvement as a defect is hard on the heart when you actually think about people. We want to be careful that we don't over optimize for certain outcomes and consider people means to an end, tools in order to build for that end. So let's design good work through this. This is a way we can look at productivity. Remote work tends to be more productive for certain heads down tasks. It's not as great typically for certain kinds of creativity that requires collaboration, but it's really clear that productivity, even in the businesses, like we worked with a lot of organizations that we'd encouraged to do remote work before, and who before the pandemic, who said, no way, we work in the office. And then they saw all the productivity and now they're much more open to this question. Let's also help design work for more autonomy. If you believe that you have to see people to manage them, well, that's just not true. We can have data, we can see this. Like, I think all of our experience now proves that we can manage people effectively, remotely, and we can give them autonomy, some power over their work, some sense of control over their work and their schedule. Why have a top-down approach to this? Let's empower and let's train, and then let's lead them towards a place of belonging where we recognize that, yes, we want to empower you with your schedule, but we also recognize that the very chemicals in our brain are different when we're around people. If I never got out from behind these monitors, never saw anybody in my life, the very chemicals in my brain, the oxytocin in my brain would be different than if I'm out working with people who care about me and that I care about. Teamwork builds different fundamental chemicals that impact our well-being. And so we want to pull people into that place of belonging and of well-being and say, we want to help you to be autonomous, productive, and yet we also want to pull you into belonging, and we want to help you towards well-being. And this is a collaboration where we listen well, we consider what's best for them, and we teach. We teach our team on life-work balance. And a lot of what we see happening in the industry across sectors is that people are leaving jobs where they're having to work more and more and more hours, and they're getting burnt out. And I think we're seeing this anecdotally in organizations where productivity expectations increase through remote work because you cut a commute, you cut the water cooler time, cut a lot of those things. So people are more productive, and now they're expected to come back to the office, but keep those levels of productivity. That's really pushing that life-work balance out of whack. And that we want to help to guide with that. We want to help to guide with understanding how to evaluate, am I feeling well? Am I working and living in a way that's actually furthering well-being? There's never been a time in business like this where everyone is open to conversations about mental health, about emotional well-being, about anxiety, where we all get to be vulnerable and honest and practice what Brené Brown preaches so well, that vulnerability empowers our leadership, that vulnerability builds trust, and that we can actually help make a difference. This is a chance to make a real difference in the lives of our teams as we lead them towards good, healthy ways of working, and as we listen and collaborate well. So having heard that, you'd think, well, just give everyone flexibility. That's what I'm arguing for. Well, I think that we should where we can. We also have to lead the organization. We have a responsibility as business leaders to lead the organization itself to a holistic, long-term definition of success. And the reality is that sometimes that means we have to impose change and impose policies that are not popular. A great definition of leadership is it's bringing change when no one wants the change, before they want it. But if you wait too long, everybody wishes that you did it. Leadership is knowing when to bring the change that people don't want yet. And we have to lead and build well. And the reality is, long-term success in a business requires collaboration and creativity. Every organization is different. You represent a different sector, different industries, different types of businesses, different size, that all makes a difference in this. But there's the famous example of when Steve Jobs built Pixar's headquarters. Maybe familiar with this, out in California. He did something that seemed very unpopular at first, which was this very big office. He put the only bathrooms off the atrium in the center of the office, which meant that all of the employees had to walk a very long ways in order to get to the bathroom. And there was a lot of grumbling until he pointed out that his whole purpose in doing that was to increase the number of random encounters that people have with each other. And that on your way to and from the bathroom, you would see a greater number of people than if there were all these bathrooms hidden throughout the campus. And that by and large, it worked. And that that he recognized that creativity requires a little chaos, unplanned interactions. Think about some of the most meaningful interactions that you've had in your career. The mentoring interactions, the personal interactions. I know for me, they are often, especially early in my career, before I knew how to be intentional about those interactions. They were unplanned interactions. They were the 5 o'clock where you sit around with the feet on the desk and you just talk and unwind and get into more personal conversations. It's the noticing that somebody's face is sad and taking a moment to say, how are you? Are things all right? And actually taking 10, 15 minutes to be there, to listen, to hold what that person has to share, to see and notice that somebody's doing something, to overhear an interesting project, an interesting opportunity, and to say, what is that? How do I get in on that? Especially when we think about those early in the career. There's an interesting challenge in building this, where the people who are building work from anywhere policies tend to be executives and leaders who know how to navigate a lot of these challenges. But these policies have to be followed by people who are brand new to their careers, who don't know how to learn your organization, who don't know how to come in and figure out what everybody does and how to advance and who the great mentors are and how to work through all of this. And so ultimately, you've got to balance this. Well, what's best for the individuals? And then what do we need as a team? And what outcomes are we optimizing for? How much creativity and innovation do you need? How important is teamwork? How important is mentoring in your culture? How much of a mission is bringing in new to industry, new to their career professionals and growing them to you? And how effectively can you really do that remotely? And so building that and then saying, okay, what are these outcomes? And then what's the right balance and dials? And in this, as you build in this, remember, you can do different things for different teams. As long as you're fair about what it is and you have a fair framework that you follow so it's not discriminatory in any way, there are teams where you can say, okay, this team, or after this much time with the organization, we can make these exceptions and simply follow this framework and begin to play with this. Remember, it's going to be different for every organization. And never before have so many sectors at this kind of scale and tens of millions of people had such a foundational, fundamental, rapid thought change in how they want to approach work. So we need to be unafraid to do some experiments as we're building this, monitor them and evolve them throughout. So building well requires that understanding of our outcomes for the organization. What are the success measures? What's driving that? What kind of collaboration, innovation, teamwork, et cetera? And then what's essentially the minimum amount of time that we need together in order to do that? And how does that change in our structure of tenure and in different teams? And if you look at it with that framework, I think you begin to have the kind of flexibility and iteration within policies that can maximize both sides of this. All right, principle 3 is build well. Principle 4 is enable well. Here's where we get into technology and tools. This is the stuff that Mainstay focuses on every day, right? We serve our clients as their IT, their information security teams. And so we are constantly focused on how to enable these organizations well, or enable our clients. But technology has to evolve based on this work from anywhere paradigm. Whether or not you plan to go fully flexible, a little bit flexible, this is another push towards the next evolution of infrastructure, which is moving towards cloud-hosted environments, towards software as a service, where you're not buying the software, installing it on your own servers, you're consuming it on a per user, per month basis because of the flexibility that it allows. This is a push towards putting everybody on laptops. The amount of laptops that we see clients procuring versus desktops has absolutely swung in the last couple of years, because even from a disaster recovery perspective, you realize something can happen to the office, something can happen to the area. We've got laptops and we've got a cloud infrastructure. We can take them, we can move anywhere. Communication, I mean, that's where Teams, Microsoft Teams, online voice over IP phone systems like Teams, like Zoom, like other online voice over IP phone systems where your computer, an app on your smartphone is your phone. Those kinds of things are an absolute requirement. Having a phone system anchored to your office makes less sense than ever. And there's no reason cost-wise or infrastructure-wise it should be that way. It also pushes the software, because work from anywhere requires a greater understanding of data, a greater understanding of how your team is working and how you measure their success. We should never, as business leaders, be measuring success by the number of hours somebody put in. That's of course an important indicator, and it's especially important in billable industries. But ultimately, we should be looking at their outcomes. What outcomes is everybody affecting, and who's being most effective in this? And if we can't do as much walking around to get that sense, well, we got to use data. Well, data is incredibly powerful, and that's where tools like business intelligence tools, Microsoft Power BI, for example, very inexpensive from a tool perspective, to start to get in and start to say, how are we measuring the effectiveness of our team? How are we actually measuring our goals as an organization? How much command do we have as leaders over what's happening every day and how that drives the outcomes of our organization? Take it from Mainstay perspective. We don't want to wait until a client has downtime or a security breach or a great dissatisfaction to say, are we doing well or not? We want to measure 1,000 activities that we do that prevent those things, that ensure that we're delivering a delightful experience on stable technology with great security. But we have to measure 1,000 different pieces of data in order to do that, and be looking at this all over the place, which the more data you consume and manage in that way, the easier this work from anywhere shift is. And then security. course I have to hit on cybersecurity. If you know me or Mainstay at all, you know we have to hit on cybersecurity because, of course, that is one of the greatest threats against every organization, and it's growing all the time. If you remember that there's about 1 million people a day who are still joining the internet every day, and that hacking tools are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, where now for low dollars, you can buy compromised accounts. You can go onto these black market sites and buy hacking tools, or just say, I want this organization hacked and it's cost this much, and there's a whole supply and demand, and the costs are going down all the time. Now, add to that most thinking for business leaders has been anchored around, I have my stuff behind my firewall. And sure, I have some clouds and I got comfortable with Office 365, some of that, but I still have this sense of a firewall. And it used to be, we actually would even put like certain firewalls at people's homes, but this isn't work from home. This is work from anywhere. People are logging in off all kinds of systems, on all kinds of networks. We have to assume that your teams are out there logging in from all kinds of networks, and that from unsafe locations and places. So what that means is that we push the investment onto the laptop. I'm pointing to my laptop, which is right here that you can't see. You can't tell, I like to use my hands. And so we want to push the investment in cybersecurity onto the endpoint, onto these devices, where we're using more and more advanced security tools, where we're actually able to detect changes that could indicate a compromise, and the system automatically blocks it and remediates it and alerts us live. We're able to secure and encrypt and monitor what's happening, so that these devices are these encrypted, incredibly locked down, incredibly secured, well monitored, with a team behind it watching what's happening, so that wherever they go, we can have a confidence in the security. So cybersecurity thinking needs to evolve into a great security around all of the software, with multi-factor authentication around all the services in the software, and then multiple layers onto the laptops. We can't rely on just antivirus and updates and passwords and basic encryption anymore. We now have to move into these advanced threat protections, these endpoint detection and response systems like Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, that are actually able to do far more to lock down and to protect and notice and block these kinds of threats. So support and enable your team well with the right technology infrastructure, the right support experience, and the right cybersecurity. And this is a great chance for me to not get yelled at by anybody from our marketing and business development team, and to say, of course, if you have any questions of that, we would love to chat with you at Mainstay, because this is what we do. We exist to take this kind of stress off of our clients, to carry these responsibilities, and to make sure that technology is an enabling and accelerating force in our clients' organizations. All right, that leads us to principle 5. Speaking of accelerating, let us accelerate well. It can seem scary with work from anywhere, because the consequence of getting it wrong is so directly felt in staff satisfaction and in turnover. Those are the things that we really want to avoid. We want to avoid this situation where your employees, my employees, our team members are leaving for better jobs that offer more flexibility, which, by the way, is often not for more money. We see a lot of wage inflation across all kinds of sectors. If you talk to recruiters, you'll hear that most professionals are optimizing for flexibility and for life-work balance. That's actually being more optimized for than money right now. But what we want to avoid is this situation where we're seeing retention and satisfaction drop. And we want to make sure we're caring for our team. So let's use this work from anywhere. However, there's also a lot of great opportunities in this. There are all kinds of ways that we can accelerate out of this and through this and optimize for it. One of the biggest, of course, is recruiting. You nail this policy, you nail this well, it's a compelling story. It's one of the top questions that you are likely getting in intro interviews now, is what is your policy on this if you're not clear about it? It's one of the things that we're able to use that attracts people to Mainstay and keeps our pipeline strong. It's something that you can use as a distinctive advantage, and especially in the thoughtfulness. Everyone resonates with a thoughtful, wise approach. And so actually being able to reveal, here are the outcomes that we value. So here's why we've set these policies. Here's the flexibility. Here's the expectations and the culture that we have around that. That is absolutely big. If you can get it right working remotely and use tools like Teams and use wise onboarding and get people together when you need for events and training and actually allow full remote work, 100% never in the office, you then get this added bonus in recruiting where your geographic boundaries expand and you can actually see cost lowered and pipelines increase because you can attract and recruit from all of these secondary and tertiary markets where people can often make significantly less, and you can give them a raise and you can control your own staff costs and expand that. Of course, some companies do that well with offshoring and actually opening offices, or just now simply saying you can work from anywhere in the world and we can get the best talent and great costs from all over. That has its own unique challenges we don't have time to get into here, but if you go for that level, you really can win on the recruiting side. But that's not the only opportunity here. I mean, you get to engage with a team in a new way, bring new mental health and anxiety management trainings. We're finding a new awareness and a new gratitude for the kinds of trainings that we're able to bring at Mainstay and that we're hearing from other business leaders. If you think about each business unit in your organization, you can start to optimize for this and say, okay, business development, sales, we've always done it this way with this much travel and in person. What's the right balance now? Let's not keep it here because this has been working, and let's not just flip it back to the way it was in old years. Let's say, what's the new thing that actually works really well that our prospects, how are they wanting to engage? How does this change the kind of pre-screening and the marketing emphasis that prospects have? How does this change the way they want to engage with us and how we leverage our in-person time really, really valuably? How does this change our use of our office space? Are we going to have more collaborative space because our team is in less often? And we get to say, let's have more break rooms and more conference rooms and less individual offices and pull our team together into working collaborative pods when they're in the office so that we can increase this. How do we maximize in recruiting to just continue to do as much recruiting online as possible and bring them in at the right stage? Even job seekers, they like to be able to do this now. They're used to video. So you have a whole ability to get efficient in these processes and to keep this. Performance management, getting really clear about the activities that drive success. What are the specifics that we can measure and we can manage and use BI on? How do we solicit feedback and get feedback opportunities from our team, from our client base? And then to step back and say, how is all of this shaping our industry and creating new opportunities? What geography did we say we wouldn't go into before that now we can go into because the costs just got lower? What kinds of cost savings do we have in this that now we can put into really meaningful team building events, culture building, and events where we're bringing everyone in for training in our team, and we're able to build this culture and actually take this to a new level where this is better than it ever was before. All right, so what does this look like at Mainstay? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. What this looks like at Mainstay is that we have a policy where we encourage as much flexibility and autonomy for each teammate as possible, but we expect everyone in the office regularly. So we hold as many team meetings in person as we can. We all come together quarterly for big events and trainings that we do. And we have a schedule of some event meetings where we expect everyone to be in person unless they have a health concern or something else comes up. And then we ask that everyone comes into the office a day a week, as much on the same day a week as possible in our offices. We have 2 offices, so it ends up being a little bit different. But like in our Manchester office, Thursday is the day. And we say we're not requiring it, but we do ask that everyone make an effort to come in on Thursday so that we can see each other, we can be around, and then we schedule certain key meetings around that. We are doing things to try to sort of entice people back into the office without having to set mandates. So we will buy lunch on certain days. We do game nights and hangouts after work where we'll have video game tournaments. And we're all in technology, so this works for our culture. You may not have video game and Dungeons and Dragons tournaments and events after your workplace, but I hear great stories of yoga and happy hour and lots of things that work depending on what each culture is. But we're actually doing things intentionally to design the office to say, we want to encourage people to come in regularly together and celebrate that together, but then allow each person full flexibility of how they use it and encourage them to treat the office as a tool. Monitor your own well-being, monitor your work, will help teach you how to do that, and then optimize for what's best for you. Are you feeling lonely and burnt out and sort of sad? And well, if you haven't been in the office for a while, try coming into the office for a bit. Let's use this as a tool and let's optimize for a really healthy and holistic version of success. We encourage and allow when our teammates move geographically, we allow them to do that and continue to work fully for Mainstay. Previously, if somebody moved away, it was typically the end of their time with Mainstay. There weren't a lot of options. There wasn't a lot of official support for that. Now we celebrate that. Life leads people in all kinds of places. And so we can continue to have these wonderful, vibrant relationships. The difference for us of where we are in our own evolution on this now is that we allow full geographic remote work for our current teammates who move. And we ask them to come back for certain key events once a quarter, work in the office for a few days, and come to these events. We design these big events around this. But we are not currently recruiting from Arkansas and Washington and California. We are saying if you move to those places, we'll support it. And it takes some legal work and some tax work, and it's not easy, but it is worth it to maintain those relationships and keep great team members. But we're not currently onboarding from that because we really value the depth of relationship that we have with our team. We really value a really trusting and holistic relationship. And once we forge that, maintaining that is different than fully forging that remotely. We would love to learn all of those ways. And we're watching the companies who've done this for a long time and who are moving into this to see what kind of success rate do you have? What kind of lessons can we learn from the full remote? But we recognize that no one size fits all here. This is not just a clear one size fits all situation. Other local companies, a client of ours, Nathan Wexler, CPA firm in New Hampshire, they mandate a Tuesday and Thursday be in the office. And then if you have a role that doesn't have an impact to client, there's special exemptions sort of considered one by one for others. Balanced plan with some requirement. We see that, like I said, Apple's going to 3 days a week in the office minimum. Amazon was doing that. And then they had so much pushback that for teams and roles that allow, they're doing full remote, but they're requiring them to be able to come in at short notice when they're needed. So you still have to be in commuting areas. So we're seeing that there's not a lot of agreement on the right flexibility, but the wrestling is what's important. I encourage you to wrestle with this. Think well, listen well, build well, support well, and accelerate through this. And then put this onto something where you're monitoring it and you're evolving it and you're using work from anywhere as a powerful tool and part of your culture. And then I look forward to continuing to learn together in this over the years. And it will be fascinating to see, we're starting to see psychologists do studies on the impact of remote work. We're starting to see more and more communications experts, leadership development experts studying this. And in future years, I think we'll see much more studies and more of a proven path in this area and how we can optimize and learn from best practices. But for now, you and I have to wrestle with this. We have to really work this through. We have to experiment and we have to optimize so we can keep our team, we can retract and retrain really well, and we have healthy cultures, healthy teams, healthy ability to drive for the holistic success that matters in the long run. All right, I would love to answer any questions that you have, to dialogue through this, and to talk through this. One of the questions that I see is, are we using any type of app for people to reserve workspace or conference rooms for visibility for colleagues going to the office? Yes, it's a great question. So what we have seen is that not only are we making sure that our conference rooms are visible and able to be booked, but we're turning more and more offices that might have been somebody's sole office, and this was their solo office, and they're using it so little that we're turning those spaces into private offices that can be booked. And if you have Office 365, which is a really common Microsoft email, it's the vast majority of our clients, or also Google in their workspaces, you can actually set up those rooms and those offices as resources. And then you just do a calendar invite and you add that resource and it will book it. And everyone can share and see that. If you get visibility on that through SharePoint, you can just get visibility on that through Outlook. I would love to see if there's any other questions and things that we can discuss. How to handle phones in a flexible scenario. So I think that this puts more and more emphasis on having a phone system that works with any kind of device. For a long time now, phone systems, the traditional phone system that's plugged into your wall, that's connected, that sits on your desk, is really just a mini purpose-built computer. If you think about when you have a phone on your desk, that's a purpose-built little computer that runs one app called your phone system. So why do it that way? Just put the app on your computer, put it on your smartphone, equip with headsets, and that you're able to then allow everybody to have access to a phone wherever they are. So at Mainstay, our phone system is Microsoft Teams. So we use Teams for chat, we use it for video, we use it for collaboration, for big team answers. And then ultimately, It's also our phone system. So the phone rings through it. It's an app on a smartphone. I do think that there is a change in policy that a lot of us have to think about, do we pay for smartphones for everyone? Because this work from anywhere, it is nice to have this other option. The hotspot, I think it does push more towards what kind of allowance do we use for smartphones? Do we, providing them, and then also for gear for work from anywhere setups, especially, work from home, where we provide dual monitors, docking stations, and the ability to work effectively, standing desks. And we're seeing more organizations saying, hey, we're going to save some office space, some travel and mileage, and we're going to put that money towards a stipend for our team, where we give them $500 for this, and we start to do smartphones. There's a question. Obviously, the type of work will dictate the remote option. Yes, of course. If you are a manufacturer who has massive CNC machines, you can't take those to the Himalayas on vacation with you. But knowledge workers, every organization has them. And I think we have to wrestle with certain positions have to work in the office. We have positions that do receiving and open boxes, take it out. There's a certain requirement in that. What we want to do is be really clear and transparent about that, support those people well, make sure there's as much fairness as we can through that. But yes, ultimately every role ends up being different. In what ways can training and mentoring be delivered from anywhere without sacrificing some of the dynamics of being in person, and are there benefits? I think there's great benefits to training and mentoring in a work from anywhere situation, because it requires a much more intentional pressure on this. So if you were thinking, when we get to a certain size, we'll have a more intentional mentoring program, we'll have signups, we'll have a very clear learning management system with training courses, but everything's working, it's not really broken. Well, it's broken now. It's broken once you move out of the office and you lose that organic mentoring. And so now it comes down to, hey, how do we design official mentoring programs where people are signing up, they're meeting for lunch, they're able to dialogue like this, they're able to have online meetings? How do we have a learning management system where we're paying for these learning tools, where people can go in and get a constant stream of learning and development? So it changes it from being organic to far more intentional. And that has both drawbacks and disadvantages. The key is, I think anyone in the HR space really needs to say that work from anywhere needs to become an absolute competence, that we drive, that HR, people, team professionals need to drive this as a competence and see this as a way that they can be thought leaders into the organization and lead towards more mentoring and training programs and ways to build the culture with work from anywhere. If you are in HR or you have an HR person, I want you to challenge them. This is a core competence and the kinds of thoughtfulness. And if you are in that space, this is the area that to become a great expert in, and then be a thought leader into your organization. And I think mentoring and training development is one of the places it starts. Thank you for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to get to talk about this with all of you. Thank you for the great questions. If you go to mstech.com/learning, you'll see we'll have other webinars like this if you found this informative at all. And if you didn't, you don't have to attend. But it was wonderful to get to chat with everybody. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much. Take care.